when you feel like you can't go on, when you feel like there's absolutely nothing left, it's how you call the resources in to get you in alignment with your soul purpose, what you came here to do. The crisis state is what I'm called to work with because that's where transformation happens. You have to learn how to walk with new legs, and you walk into a whole new scene. But then in that scene, you connect with your values, you become in alignment, and you do the thing you came to do in Earth School.
In today's busy world, how can we find the inspiration, knowledge, and energy to live a healthy and empowered life? If we balance and harmonize our mind, exercise our body, live according to the laws of nature, and connect to spirit, can we find a way to heal, become our authentic self, and live our purpose with love? I am your hostess, Amy Fournier, and welcome back to Awakening Aphrodite. Did you know I have an e-store? That's right. I have put together all of my favorite things that I use every day. Things like my red light therapy, the biogeometry jewelry and products, Pharaoh skincare, Sebin Solis skincare, my favorite unbelievably powerful, gorgeous Vogel cut crystals, my water filter, all my supplements, all that stuff and more. These are things I use every single day and I believe so much in that I want to help get them out in the world and share them with you. So the best part is you get coupon codes if you want to try these products yourself and experience how they work and how they're magically important. Then use my coupon codes because you'll save some money. And you know what else? It's a great way to support me too. I get a small commission on some of these items because I'm bringing them to you. So it's a triple win. And these beautiful companies get out there in the world, which they need to do. We need to be part of the solution, everybody. Focus on the things that we can do. And these are the things we can do by drinking clean filtered water and eating good food and getting to sleep and having harmonizing music to help control our frequencies. All these things are positive things that we can do every single day because the solutions and the world that we want to create comes from us, our everyday choices, the things that we do, we listen to, we say, we expose ourselves to, and we feel. And that's what this show is about, helping you dial all that in, get that lifestyle dialed in, mind, body, and spirit. So thank you for supporting me and supporting the items on my e-store. Now let's get to the show. Did you know that the word psyche is from the root meaning soul? That's right. So a psychologist actually originated as a doctor, a teacher of the soul. And today's guest, Dr. Dara Goldberg, is a fascinating blend of a spiritual teacher and a psychologist. She's a clinical psychologist and author that specializes in incorporating spiritual elements for healing and growth and living with soul purpose. I don't know about you, but it's not every day that I hear a psychologist having that as her mission. Isn't that cool? So today we're going to talk about spiritual psychology with Dara. This is a fascinating discussion. I know you're going to love it because, you know, one of my favorite quotes is by Aristotle, who talks about the soul is to the body what vision is to the eyes. We know there's no separation. And you know what's really cool, my friends? It's not every day you hear a clinical psychologist talk about the goddess. So I love this discussion, and I know you will too, because we get into courage and tips to connecting to your divine self and helping you achieve more self-care in your everyday life. The difference between values and goals, which is very important distinction. And we even talk about mermaids. Oh, and if you're watching the show on YouTube at Awakening Aphrodite Podcast, Fit Amy TV, you will see a picture of one of my paintings, which actually is right over there on the wall. And we'll put it up on social media too at Fit Amy TV on Instagram. Because when we first started recording the show, Dara mentioned she saw in the background of my video that painting on the wall, and she was really fascinated by it. Before we started actually recording, we got into it a little bit, and I explained the details of that painting to her. So I thought it was really interesting how she locked right onto that when we connected online. And as of yet, no other guest has done that. So this is a really fun and fascinating discussion. I hope you enjoy it. And before we get to it, I just wanted to share with you, I am just like on fire right now because I just had the best lunch. I had my favorite tuna company, and you probably know the benefits of eating fish and a healthy diet, but the poor oceans are so full of chemicals and waste. And all the little creatures are trying to detox and handle that, just like we are humans walking around on Earth. So it's really, really important that your fish be free of all these toxins. And you definitely don't want to ever eat farm-raised fish, which is a whole nother discussion. But my favorite source for tuna is definitely St. Jude tuna, because it's a family-run and owned business. It's low mercury, it's low toxins, and they harvest their fish sustainably and with respect and reverence for the ocean and the waters and the creatures. That's why it's on my e-store, because just like all the other companies there, they have soul. They have mission and soul, and they see the bigger picture. And I love supporting these businesses. And if you want to check it out, go ahead to my website, amyfournier.com. Look for St. Jude tuna. There's even a little coupon code there. You can save some money. I know it always helps. Saving here and there adds up, doesn't it? And maybe you will have energy after you eat and feel good from the inside out, like I do right now. And I love sharing that with you. Okay, let's now join Dara. Welcome back, everybody. Dara, such an honor and a pleasure to have you on Awakening Aphrodite. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very happy to be here with you.
Would you like to give us a little background on yourself and what brought you to where you are today, sitting down with us?
Well, here's most of my degrees, which,
Yes.
a lot of pressure on me there, but this is the fun.
She's pointing at her books. So she's got a bunch of plaques
Yeah.
on the wall, and she's got some books next to her on a table. Yep.
So basically, this is the groundwork, and these are the wings.
Okay, so she, just for the audio audience, she's pointing the groundwork are her degrees on the wall, and the wings are her books. Okay.
Yeah. And I guess you could say they sprouted organically. I wasn't expecting that at all. They're like wings of courage, basically, which are not just mine. I mean, when I wrote them, I was very tapped into collective energy. And so I was feeling us all go up together. I really think it's cool that we have this communication today, because I love also what has generated from these seeds that were planted, having the courage to plant the seed, because sometimes you don't know what's going to bloom, and you just have to nurture it for years or decades and have patience when you see nothing. And then one day there's like a little sprout, and you're like, well, that's so cool. And so that's what I feel like happens.
This is so amazing. We're starting the discussion and you bring up courage, because it's just been astounding to me as I've awakened more of my divine feminine and Aphrodite, which is what my whole show is about, that you don't, when people think of the feminine and feminine qualities and essence and energy, they don't usually think of courage or like strength. Like they think of like, the butterflies and the, tutus and the being like, passive and, quiet and pretty and all that stuff. This is just amazing how I have learned in this deep dive of me reclaiming that feminine in me, that courage is a major theme of the feminine, the courageous warrior energy, the warrior goddess, the Amazons, Artemis. I mean, all of that. Would you like to talk more about that? Because it's just so interesting that you said courage, that's the first topic,
Well, as you're speaking about it, I'm just kind of connecting it to root chakra. When, the courage, and connecting it to whether it's feminine or masculine energy, it just feels very, not just root, but lower chakras in general, which sometimes are very hard to tap into, because the more gentle feminine-ish chakras are more like crown or third eye. Those are the ones we think of with divine feminine, being very intuitive and nurturing and connected. And root is like safety, security, and even like assertiveness and the strength of
Yep.
warrior goddess. And that's moving forward. You need to ground the energy into the physical plane, not just the spiritual planes. We can channel it through feminine energy, but then we got to move with the courage forward. But when we think of these lower chakras, that's also extremely feminine energy because that's creation. So it's just the kind of wounded, unfortunately, feminine energy because it hasn't been honored. We all have our wounding that kind of comes with being on the earth plane with the toxic masculinity that has occurred. And so it takes courage to reactivate the feminine strength through all the wounding that has occurred for, like, the grounded chakras.
Such an interesting point and such a valid point. Totally agree. And then of course, in addition to those base chakras, courage, fourth chakra, I mean the heart, right? I mean,
Yes, the
right. I mean,
wings. That's the wings.
yeah, and the wings, but the root of the word is heart, right? Correct. And we know that the heart chakra, which is your fourth, your lungs, your breasts, like you said, your wings, out those arms.
Yeah.
It takes courage to love, and that's what the fourth chakra, the heart chakra, is the love, to receive and give love, real love, unconditionally, if it's humanly possible. We're not sure if it really is yet, unless you're an enlightened master, but that takes true courage to love completely.
The most amount. And we started off also talking a little bit before we went on about the power of connection. And I really want to keep that as a thread running through because that's what heart chakra does. It also connects the upper and lower chakras. So we're talking about, all this gentle energy coming in here and then like the assertive power energy coming here. But when you activate this, then you bring it all together. You have a clear flow, Kundalini awakening kind of stuff. And then you fly, with full alignment in your highest power, but grounded into the physical with courage, heart chakra. Oh, I'm so glad you brought it.
So let's bring this down to earth for all of us and like boots on the ground, practical application of what we're talking about. You mentioned that courage was a big part of you manifesting your books and all of the work that you've done.
Yeah.
Can you explain for us literally what you mean? Like you had to go on a limb, like it was a topic that people
Yeah.
kind of, like how did you need courage to do what you've done?
Well, so you see there are the degrees, and I went to a very scientific academic school, which I really appreciated the foundation of understanding everything that came before, how we understand the science of psychology, and how we have done all of these research studies, but keeping in mind that we've done research studies with some limitations, not fully accepting energetic fields, more intuitive kind of energies, because it's hard to measure things that are more qualitative than quantitative, which was always a struggle throughout my grad school process as I leaned very qualitative. And, the question was, how are you going to measure that? That was
Yes.
basically like 10 solid years of how are you going to measure that? And that was my biggest challenge was when we did start measuring things. And I'm really proud of the work that I did in grad school, but I did it all as a foundation to be taken seriously for what I always meant to do, which was this. And it took a lot of courage to introduce more spiritual content into a very scientific field, which actually took a long time to become taken seriously as a scientific field because it's about emotions, which are generally unseen wounds, right? It's very easy to say, like, I have a broken arm, I fix the arm, and now I'm better. But the unseen scars, the unhealed wounds that you don't see on the outside and take for granted that they're there, but you don't understand the power they have in controlling your life, because it's all operating from beneath the surface. So the study of psychology to be taken seriously as well, is that real? Are those emotions under the surface really what's driving you? A lot of science goes into that. So it was going out on a limb to be staying within the field of psychology, not jumping to the field of spirituality, but staying in the field, which was a scientific field that has accreditations and all of that, and incorporating these very amorphic, is that a good word? Intangible energies into something so scientific. And I'm sure that it's still a process that if we had a peer review article, I'm sure they would say lots of interesting things about how can you measure that. But with new technology. And I love, there's something called the Heart Math Institute because they have come
Yes.
up with ways to measure our heart energy. So I believe with the new technology and people's interest in more spiritual ways of healing, there's going to become newer ways to measure with new technology things that are unseen. So that was my courageous, brave move for my career. And it was all done in terms of calling and how can I best serve? And that was it for me.
And you being true to yourself because you felt like this was legit, this is real, despite the pushback and probably being made fun of and called the woo woo
Mm-hmm.
girl and all that stuff. You
Uh-huh.
pursued because
Yeah.
you felt it. It's such a pet peeve of mine. I've been in holistic health and wellness as a professional for over 3 decades. And, I would hear all the time of people that were presenting symptoms and they would come back and say things like, the tests show I'm normal, quote unquote, or I'm in the average range. I mean, but they're, subclinical or whatever. And I would always say, just because we don't have the type of tool or measurement
Right.
ability doesn't mean something doesn't exist. Like
Exactly.
how did we pound a nail before we had a hammer? That doesn't mean everything's okay just because our ability to measure it can't find it. You know what I mean? So,
I know exactly what you mean. And within that is also how do we receive cures? Because just because we don't know that it's there doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And when you
right.
open yourself up in a healthy way and you know how to discern and you know how to clear shadows, you're able to receive information you may not know existed. Or, I use the word cure, which I realize could be very heavy, but maybe healing or beneficial or somewhat helpful.
Harmonizing.
Harmonizing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think what's important for all of us to remember is that psychology was originally psyche is Latin for
Yes,
soul. I mean, it's supposed to be the study
absolutely.
of the soul. So the irony of ironies is that the whole idea of being a psychologist, which you are, a clinical psychologist, is to be a specialist, an expert, a doctor of the soul. And your whole profession is, going the Newtonian physics and materialism is not how do you prove the soul? You can't measure the soul. So it's like, how did that go? The ship went right off target there. We went away from that.
I hate to say focus on more masculine stuff, but I think that's what happened.
Apparently, I mean, they went into the materialism, right? So,
Yeah.
well, anyway, happy to say it's coming back. And I love that you are combining your psychological training, which is very important, with the spiritual training. I mean, who can deny the existence of these esoteric things that, like as we said, can't be measured, but are very, very real. I mean, let's just hope everyone on the planet has felt love.
Right?
How can you measure love? But it doesn't make it any less real.
Exactly. And you can see the evidence of the outcomes. So you may not be able to measure the love itself, but you can see when somebody feels loved.
Perfect. I love it. So, spiritual psychology then, to you, what would you say that is?
It's basically holding space for the things that you may not know, which is a deep level of humility, which is often in the medical field. I know that, it might help people to feel confident when a doctor feels very sure of themselves and very confident. But I think there's always room for could there be also some more information that we're not taking into account right now? When you look at a symptom, not the origin of the problem, when you just focus on a symptom, right? You can have extreme confidence that this makes the symptom go away, but have we addressed the root cause here? So basically, the spiritual element is being able to receive a higher level of wisdom that doesn't come straight from the earth plane, that's not just human, but also possibly, and I use these words because this is in the spiritual realm, but angelic or God related. And it takes a certain level of being open minded with healthy discernment to be able to receive that kind of information. And it's a practice that anybody can do. But it does take a lot of discernment, which the background in psychology is helpful for because there is dysfunctional thought processes that lead to certain symptoms that are not comfortable when you open up to more spiritual information. So, spiritual health and wellness is extremely important in being able to hold that level of information, being able to integrate it into your daily life without, and this is where the rooting and the grounding comes so in hand, because you can get a lot of stuff through your crown chakra that you're not able to ground into a normal everyday reality, and it kind of knocks you off balance. So the importance of spiritual psychology is integrating this high level wisdom into a very psychologically healthy being, knowing your triggers, your traumas, your shadows, everything, because spiritual information can be distorted as well through psychological processes. So you want to have the psychological health to receive the spiritual information with clarity, and also use it wisely and in the highest good, because it's extremely powerful. So you want to make sure that the intentions are pure as well, and that it's received with the purest of intentions and for the highest good, which is part of what, people do in spiritual work. You make sure you clear your energy field, you make sure that you're receiving with the highest good, with pure intentions. And it's something to be very honored and cherished and respected, because it is so powerful, which is why it can be so healing. But we must really revere the importance of this, because we are not in control of it. We just receive it.
Aha. What do you mean by that? We just receive, we're not in
So
control.
this is not a man-made product.
Okay.
Spirituality is something we receive from a divine source. So maybe, we were talking about the hammer and the nail. Like, if we have created the hammer, we may know how the hammer works, right? But if we do not create this, but it's created from the divine realm, we must really respect that we might not know all the ingredients that went into that and what it could interact with.
I'll just say we don't understand any of the bodies, whether it be physical, emotional, mental, or any of them. I mean, we still don't know really all the physical. Yeah, other than the mechanics of the physical body, we still don't know even like how the body heals itself. How when you get a cut, how does that even happen that your body knows how to heal? Like we don't know any of this stuff. But
Exactly. And that's why the humility is so important, because you may think you understand how something surfacely occurred, but the humility to open yourself up to receiving the higher level wisdom of understanding the mechanics behind it all. And that is
yes.
being the spiritual psychology, is opening up that space to receive the higher level wisdom.
And how do you help people differentiate, Dara, with the emotional, mental components from the spiritual? Because that gets a little murky with people.
Yes, and I would have to say, if I have been given any kind of gift in this field that I've had to hone, it's exactly that. And I think that's why I was called to do this, is because that takes intuition of knowing vibrational frequency, being able to feel where certain energies are emanating from. You have to feel if that's coming from a wound. You have to feel if it's coming from something really heavy within the system, if it's coming from a physical wound, or if it's coming from, and gets into like auric field kind of stuff. And that I would say takes a long time to hone accurately. And you don't want to jump into that without knowing what you're doing, because
Yeah.
you don't want to misinterpret. So I
Yeah.
would say that takes a lot of honing and recalibrating, constant, keeping yourself vibrationally high and clear when you're doing the work, so that you can use your intuition at that level.
Yes. It's a big one of, I refer to your book, Awaken Your Inner Goddess, which is fantastic. Um, I love that you have a whole section on establishing yourself. I think you refer to it as divine self love. And
Mm,
if you don't have a relationship with yourself as the foundation, how are you going to have the relationship outside? You're just, and one of my mentors, Paul Chek, talks about an I, we, all principle. And this is something women struggle with self-care and
Oh,
self-love and
yes.
all that we don't have the I locked in. Our boundaries are murky and we do the we're taking care of everybody else and everything else. And then the all, like the collective, and when do we happen? If at all, it's with a lot of, boatload of guilt on the side. So I like that that's a whole section in this book, your practical tools for self-care, emotional healing, and self-realization. You talk about the foundational self-divine relationship.
Yes. And the reason it's not selfish is, going back to what I was saying earlier, is in order to be a accurate instrument, you need to make sure that everything's functioning with clear um, clarity. You don't want blockages in your system. And in that relationship, and it basically creates the awareness of knowing if something's off, if something's wrong. Because when you're able to detect that, you're able to recalibrate, and then you're able to go out into the world as your divine self, as your truest essence, without holding other people's stuff in your system. Because what happens when you do that is you're going to magnetize in other people's wounds, and then you're going to magnetize stuff to your wounds. And to go out into the world and raise the frequency of humanity, you want to be your truest, authentic, purest self. And it's really unfortunate that we have so much guilt around self-care because, if we go back all the way through history, it probably is a whole bunch of fear of the power of the feminine because it's extremely powerful to be clear.
Yes. And that's part of why organized religion and all that tried to have an intermediary to connect with God, goddess. It never was like that. Everybody had a direct connection. And then they had to kind of hone
To
that in.
control, we have to, right, to control something so wild seeming.
Yeah. Yeah. So any tips for us in connecting to our divine self?
Yeah. Oh, okay. I always defer to this. I know it seems so simple. Barefoot on the ground. It
Yeah.
sounds so
And,
simple, but that's literally the first relationship is Mother Earth. We are here on Earth. We are in Earth school.
made
So
from earth.
made from Earth.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
that to me is like number one thing to do. And I know there's scientific studies about like the ions and stuff that
Sure.
happens over there. But there's also all of these acupressure points in the foot that are
Yep.
connected to all the organs. So
Mm-hmm.
once you establish connection with the earth, first of all, it's grounding. It just reminds us we are here. We are here now for a reason. And no moment is to be taken for granted, not in a high pressure way, but in always recentering when things get really challenging or feel out of balance. You just recenter and know that each moment of Earth school is just our divine soul having a human experience for an important reason. So when you remind yourself of that, it helps you kind of get through the thing. And then you can, learn the details of the reason or what's the next best step. And so when you ground, it prepares you to move forward. So the first thing is grounding, and the second thing is drink water. Another just so simple thing. But I feel like that one clears out all the energy. Two, connects everything in a very physical way. Like the water literally goes through, and you're basically activating the body system, the energy body system, and clearing out stagnant energy all at the same time. And I could go on forever about all the Masaru Emoto water studies, water crystals. It's just my absolute favorite thing. I think it's so fascinating the memory that water holds, that we've always basically had the same water that goes to our ground, to the clouds, back in a whole cycle. And water is life, that is, we are made so much of water that it really, we should consider the importance of that element, and also the power that element has to make waves. Like if you say a word to the glass of water, and as the study shows, basically more positive words create a holistic kind of crystal, and the negative words look like a broken crystal. So it's basically just the wholeness of, and they're all very different, but the wholeness of what that thing is. So the wholeness of truth, or the wholeness of health. And when you can integrate that into your body in a very physical way through just a glass of water, it is such an easy step that can really move, emotion. We want to move the emotions through us. So wherever you're stuck or overwhelmed or trying to process something, it helps create a very gentle movement, and you have power and control over how you take that into your system, what you say to the water, what words you put out into the universe, into your own auric fields, how you speak to yourself, that kind of thing.
You see, this is such a beautiful, direct example of how you are a spiritual psychologist, because we could say all the physical necessities and benefits of drinking enough water, which we've all heard for, 40 years, right? Yeah, so you're not dehydrated. When you exercise, you sweat, you got to replace it. But the spiritual component, water is the divine feminine. And this is what you are bringing this in, the spiritual component, and how water, we know without a fact, and now we have the science to back it, thank goodness, that water is intelligent. Water is a higher consciousness. And water, like you said, has a structure like a snowflake. It actually has shape. When you really look microscopically at water molecules, they have shape that can be distorted, just like our physical bodies have shapes that can be distorted when we don't eat right and move right and think right and all that stuff. Water's the same way. We've done many shows on water because I'm all about it. The show with Isabel Friend and Dolph Santanga, we can put that in the show notes for people. But if people,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, guys, water is just so much more than we ever even were aware it was. And again, it's much more than being hydrated. It's carrying information to your body and instructions, just like food is, or it's not. Like, that's why the source of your water and having it, make sure it's filtered and structured properly, is paramount to everything. It's more important than food, frankly, because as you know, we're made up of more water than we are food.
Exactly. Which now may we introduce the chalice because I feel like it's the perfect time. I That was the first thing that caught my eye. I can feel the energy of that from here. Can you just tell me about it?
Okay, so for this for the audience, everybody, what she's referring to is I have a painting on my wall in my office where we are recording, and if you are able to view this show, you just go to Awakening Aphrodite podcast, Fit Amy TV on YouTube, and you can watch along with us as we are recording here. And hello, welcome. And if you're listening on the audio, apologies, but try to maybe take a peek later when you're in a safe place to do so. And in my office, I'll just point over there on my wall. I have one of the many paintings that I painted, and that was, gosh, Dara, probably, oh my gosh, probably about maybe just about 2 years ago. And it was after a plant medicine ceremony, not immediately after, because I was pretty much recovering, but it was during that same period of time. And it just kind of came to me from my higher self. And as I've learned with art therapy and any kind of right brain activation work, it's all about getting out of the way, because
Hmm.
the best way to screw up your feminine and your right brain is to overthink it and judge it. The feminine hates judgment because it completely suffocates her and turns off all the connection. So that painting, like many of my paintings, just came out of me, and you can see that there's a chalice there. And of course it's gold. And the chalice is a symbol of the feminine, right? The receptive cup. And there's a lion there, which was really interesting. I don't know where that came from, but that came through super, super strong. And the lion energy is the sun energy and the powerful energy and a symbol of strength.
Courage.
Yeah, and courage. Thank you. And courage and
Yeah.
strength. And of course, there's some kind of elemental being. I don't know if everybody can see it really well, but she has got wings like your phoenix. And it's definitely a feminine because she has breasts. And of course, she has hair. And then I don't know if you can see her head, but it's actually the Tao symbol, the Tai Chi symbol of the yin and the yang. But rather than black and white on the two sides, it's a little bit far away, but rather than black and white, for some reason, I've got a blue and a green as the two halves. And it's got some BG3 in there, which from my biogeometry training, it's got the L90s in the corners. And I believe I did 7
Whoa.
of them. Yeah, the element of 7, because we've learned in the science of biogeometry that, shape and number and color and all that has energetic properties. So that painting is actually quite balanced energetically. And I know you can't see this, but there's actually a serpent in there. And there's two,
Whoa.
yeah, it's right at the middle of the chalice, right under her body. And there's two, I don't really know what they are. They're not spiders, but some kind of insects, like almost like, I don't know, I say tarantulas, but they're two something, crabs or something in there, which is a whole nother thing, right? There's so much to art therapy of what my soul was trying to communicate, express, whatever, reveal. And this is why I always do this with my private clients. And I've done many workshops when I had my club, and I'm looking forward to doing them again. my new home when I have retreats again. It's such a powerful, simple, and fun way to not only connect with your inner child, but also connect with your soul and let your soul talk to you. So many people are like,
Yes,
they don't have the connection.
uninhibited.
Yeah, and just like it has an outlet. And like I said, the only rule is to get out of the way, don't judge it, and just let it go and see what happens.
Incredible. And I love that I can feel like, even without knowing all of those details, it just feels so like radiant just from here
Really?
looking at it. And when, a
Wow.
chalice, because, flow energy and water is so powerful, but also containment, which goes
Yes.
back to the like psychological aspect of of spirituality, is a lot of times, if you have a huge body of water, that's very hard to digest, on all kinds of levels. So you contain it, like a cup that you are able to, and, is your
Sure.
cup full? We talk a lot about that. Like, how can you fill others' cup if yours isn't full? And when you honor your cup like a chalice, it becomes more of a revered self-care instead of whatever distortions we have picked up along the way. But taking care of yourself is the first way to take care of somebody else.
I just love, that's such a great point about the chalice being a container. And we know the womb is the ultimate in BG3 source and containment of the life force. That's what, again, back to my biogeometry training, that form and shape determine function. There's a reason why the womb is that shape.
Yes.
Chalice is that shape, and different things are shape. So shape matters. Shape of everything matters. Feng shui and all this, we know it's very, very important. So that's just brilliant that you bring that up. Another thing you talk about in your book is how there's a difference between values and goals. And I've been just like banging on the soapbox of our values lately with everything going on in the world, and how we have to put our money where our mouth is and live those values we say are important to us. Can you talk about what you think the difference is between goals and values?
Yeah, goals can change over time. You may have a goal to accomplish a certain project, and then you get into the project and it doesn't feel right anymore. And then you have to ask yourself, how am I not aligning with this project that I thought was going to be so great for whatever? And then you realize that it's no longer aligning with your values. Maybe you did the project because you wanted to help people, or you got involved because you thought it would bring abundance. And then as you get into it, you realize it's no longer aligning with your values of connection or caring or generating enough, but that it's actually sapping your energy dry, or it's getting you into a very energy state where you're so exhausted, and it's not just that you're tired, but it's that just pulling you down. So then that goal is no longer aligning with your values. And that's the time to ask yourself, of course, take accountability for your actions, but how can you reroute it to realign with the value? Because the goal doesn't matter anymore if it's not in alignment with the true value. So you really want to know your values through and through. That's like, step one of establishing. And I really feel like we should do that in schools early on, because when people know what their values are, you don't get lost like 3 years into some program and that you're like, why am I doing this? Because when you're always recentering back to your core values, the goal will align naturally with that. And it may not be what you originally thought it would be,
Yeah.
but it may come from the higher power. It may end up being your calling. So when you get rerouted in life, or things seem like, man plans, God laughs, life happens when you're making other plans. So when you
Yeah.
stick to your values and you stay in alignment, basically what happens could be greater than anything that you could have ever imagined, because you kind of channeled it from your higher self, or you know for the greater good in a way that you didn't have the capacity to see.
And you just said it, when you stick to your values, you're in alignment. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's something to be underscored, that when you stick to your values, you are in alignment. And when you're living not according to your deep core values, you're not in alignment. And therefore, you're going to be weak. You're going to be weak emotionally, physically, mentally. I mean, gosh, in this day and age, we see people all the time not living according to their values. They say this is important, that's important, but they're off doing this other stuff. What do you think that's all about?
I That is so absolutely heartbreaking. Now I'm going to get very psychological, but early attachment. Early attachment to me is basically everything. I think we should restructure all of our systems to focus on how to nurture that and how to create space for that and how to have the resources for that, because that's when values are established. That's when you internalize healthy ways of interacting with yourself and others. That's when you know what you need and how to get it in a healthy way without um, hurting people. But what has happened is that because what it seems like it took a lot for people to survive. We've had a lot of survival energy. And unfortunately, through kind of toxic energies, the system has come out in terms of how to survive toxic energy. And it's very hard to be vulnerable in a world full of toxic energy because you won't survive, which is the scariest part. And that's where the courage comes in. Because if enough people were authentic, if enough people were able to feel vulnerable to their true self, we wouldn't have to be constantly defending and surviving. We would be thriving because you wouldn't be afraid and living in that kind of fight or flight adrenaline. It doesn't feel right to me, but I got to survive. So I got to take down this other guy. And it's all about competition. And I mean, we could go in so many directions about how that distorted energy looks today. But basically, it all goes down to core wounding that happens, I believe, very early on, but also could be corrected. Even if we're talking about stuff that's in the soul, even if we're talking about like life after life, in those early formative years, the womb time, the birth, the few years after that, that is when we are integrating how to be our true self in this world. And if you feel like you're never going to be safe and you're never going to be fed and you're never going to have those things, then you live in a life that looks like survival and war and fear
And self-sabotage. You sabotage it.
oh yeah, of
Mm-hmm.
course, because also it's like the will to live. Why do you want to be here if it feels so terrible? If being your true self hurts so much?
Or I'm going to leave you before you leave me because people leave me or something, or I can't
I
trust
mean,
people.
that is
Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
yeah, fear of abandonment. I mean, that is huge. We could go through the DSM and look where fear of abandonment activates. Like, so if we focus on the feminine energy of nurturing and recognize the power of birthing, creation, and honored those things, then the world would look entirely different.
And support and respect mothers because
I mean,
for
in a
all the things,
nutshell,
yeah,
yes.
I mean, all the things that you're saying, and in a way that just is legit. Like it's not less than or anything else. Just, that you're not some highfalutin career woman. You're a mom. And that is 100%, that we would think this. It's not me saying that. It's just that the society would truly embody the support and acceptance of that being just as important as any other job. Because until that happens, people collectively deep in their soul and their cellular body will not really believe it. And
Right.
therefore, how can those attachment problems or early attachment, you call them, issues, not occur? I mean, because there's going to be the mother's probably not going to be there to prevent them from happening. The child isn't fully nurtured and supported, so they get these issues.
Yes. And it's so fixable.
Yeah. Okay. So that was my next question. Is it truly fixable that these early attachment problems, can we truly heal them? Because these are deep wounds from
Well,
decades
healing
ago.
them later on is so much harder than preventing in the first
Okay.
place.
Right. Yeah.
But that's the job. So, it takes a lot of corrective experiences building new neural pathways. So first you have to identify, and this is cognitive behavior therapy. So you have a core belief system, and then situational things happen to you, and a dysfunctional thought process occurs trying to understand why they're happening. And then the thoughts and the emotions and the behaviors all bounce off each other in this dysfunctional way based on a core belief system that was formed early on that I'll never be taken care of. I'll never be loved for my true self. I'll never get enough resources. I'll cry and cry and no one will come. I'll never be seen. So first you have to identify where the dysfunctional thought process is and where the root of it is in the core belief system. Then you have to practice. It takes like a few weeks to create a new habit. You have to create the new neural pathway, which takes tremendous courage. You're basically totally out on a limb,
And commitment.
completely vulnerable, commitment to doing it regularly until you see results, which takes a while and takes some, things along the way that are going to happen where you have to trust the process as you build the new neural pathway. And that is, that's the work. And you have to have a safe and secure therapeutic relationship while you're doing that. You have to have a safe container, a safe space. You have to trust the process. There's ruptures in the therapeutic process and the therapeutic bond. There's unpredictable things that happen, but all of that is a step that you use towards rebuilding the neural pathway, and you just have to keep going. And that's why the feet on the ground, drink water, like simple things that just help you take that next step. Because the hardest thing is just getting stuck and
Yep.
believing that you're never going to get out of the cycle.
And keep going. You just got to not give up and keep trying till you find something that starts to move the needle. And
Exactly.
it takes resiliency. And back to our courage in the beginning of the show, you just have to keep going because this is life. Life is going to beat you down, and you're only going to rise up from the phoenix when when you're in the ashes. And it all gets burned away, and then all of a sudden you rise up. But you have to burn away all the crap first, so you got to have some resiliency in there.
And, emotions are like waves, and it feels like an emotion is going to take you down, but the
Yep.
emotions will never take you down. So the important thing to know is no matter what emotion it is a wave and it will go down.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how they work.
The cyclical nature of, yeah,
The cyclical
it
nature.
will
So that's why
pass.
be careful with behavior, because the actions are what can cause harm or self-harm. But when you know that the emotion inevitably will flow and you allow space for the transformation, is when you rise up again. The phoenix burns all the way down, but you have to trust that it's going to come back again, because you're afraid that it's not going to, and then you act. That's when it will
That's a good
never
point.
rebirth.
That's a good point. And it's like energy cannot be created nor destroyed, right? So the ashes are just another form of the energy, and the fire is transformation. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So this just to remember that it didn't go away. It's just in a different form, which then that's a whole nother discussion to wrap our brains around, right? But I've got to ask you though, as a clinical psychologist, what are your thoughts on the effectiveness of talk therapy? Because I'm big on the embodiment and your cells remembering stuff. And I for one have gone through talk therapy in my younger years, and it got me a whole bunch of nowhere for years, because it was all an intellectual process of the older, more mature and aware Amy knew that some of the stuff I was dealing with was, kind of dumb, really. Well, not dumb, but, like, don't worry, like, that's silly. Why would I feel that way? But I couldn't help it, and I had these things because my body was holding the memories. My body
Yeah,
was
okay,
holding,
that's
yeah,
the entire reason for spiritual psychology. You
yeah,
can talk, but think about that. That's entirely here. We're not integrating the body, we're not integrating the chakras. We don't know which
yeah.
frequency we're at. We don't know what it feels like for someone to be talking to you, but how are you integrating that information? So the important thing in talk therapy is the sense of agency. You have to be able to feel safe enough to connect in that space and have your own agency. Because if it's just the other person talking all the time and you're never growing within that relationship, or you're never asserting yourself within that relationship, or being aware of how the words are hitting. Okay, you could have like the logicalist therapy for 10 years, but if you don't know where the blocks are in your chakras, you won't know why it never got digested. Why did it never make it here where the wound was? Is there a block here? Is it? And then that's where all the more subconscious material may come up. Like maybe there's a block in receive. You could receive a ton of great wisdom that you could never integrate because there was a wound here that's blocking all of it, because maybe, going all the way back to the attachment, maybe you didn't feel safe receiving that milk, so you're never going to swallow and receive and digest. So it's going to get stuck. So the therapeutic relationship is absolutely crucial. And I think actually studies have been done to show that that might even be the number one important part of therapy is the relationship. Because in the relationship is an energetic system that's happening where that's the fire of transformation.
You
And
mean
if
the
you
relationship between, excuse me, between the
don't focus
therapist
on
and
fire,
you? Oh, okay, okay.
because that's the fire of transformation, that's where energy is moving. And if the relationship is off, and you could take years working on that relationship too and talking that through and
Wow.
everything, but if your heart's not in it, if you're not deeply connected at the core wounds that are part of it, then it will just skim over and it will never get integrated, never get digested. And also, that goes back to how you process in terms of early attachment. If you're not able to receive love because of, anxious, avoidant, all the different kinds of non-secure attachments, you may never be able to receive the greatest wisdom ever because you don't feel safe emotionally integrating it, or you'll never believe that it was like you were ever loved or you ever could be loved. So profound shifts have to happen through energetic frequency, which gets very spiritual and into the vibration stuff and fire transformation and all of that. But that's when I believe the real work happens through
See,
the energy bodies.
what I'm taking away from that is, wow. I mean, you're talking about it's about the relationship between the therapist and the person. What a tremendous responsibility of the therapist. And you absolutely have to have full trust in your therapist that you feel safe. I mean, so therefore, what I hear is that you got to be really astute in picking your therapist. It's almost like picking your partner
Yes.
because you have to be
Yes.
able to deeply trust and feel safe to be open and vulnerable. You can't just, yeah,
Absolutely.
wow.
You absolutely nailed it. That if I could say like the number one most important thing, it is that. And you can even spend years working up to that point with the
Okay.
therapist. Your
Okay.
whole therapy
It
could be
might not be
working
right
up to that
away.
point.
Yeah. Okay.
But you need to trust yourself within the process. And if something doesn't feel right, then you got to trust that because it means you're not going to integrate. And in that trust, even if it takes 10 years to build the trust, but then you build it, that's the fire of alchemy. Because that relationship is teaching you how to have the relationship with yourself that you needed all along, which was what it ultimately comes down to. It ultimately comes down to you being able to have the relationship with yourself so you can have the relationship with your higher self. But you can't trust that higher self if you can't trust yourself or the other person because you've never integrated secure attachment.
Mic drop. There you go. I mean, that's about it, everybody. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Such great stuff, Dara. Wow. Amazing. So, of course, your website, phoenixrisingsun.com, you have some beautiful poetry on there. And one of which is the phoenix isn't a pile of burning ashes, nor is it fully resplendent glory. It is the light that holds the wings in place when it needs to fly. It is the light that burns through what can only be transmuted. It is the light within you that is connected to all things. It is a beingness that can exist only by living its true nature and purpose. No matter what state you come to recognize it, it is holy fire. That is just like, wow. You wrote that.
So I think the blog, this is the blog. I
Yes.
actually had to delete like 90% of the blog because I went back and read it and I was like, are people gonna understand do I understand what I'm talking about? So this is new. This is how the website started. As I love like editing and being creative and all of that. And it actually was processing grief is how the whole website started. And I wanted to edit something creatively to process my grief. And so I had fun with the website, and the website came with a free blog. And I was like,
Okay.
that was not my plan. But I was like, oh, this is fun and I can do this. And then all of a sudden it's as if like lightning went through me and started writing the blog, which is how the book happened too. So the blog just like, and I could not stop. It felt like lightning. It actually did. And maybe that was the transmuting fire of whatever, but um I think, and this way you kind of have to be a little careful in grief. I know there's a lot of practices where, you cover mirrors, for example, just to make sure that you're not calling in energy because you're very vulnerable in grief.
Yes.
And I think that what happened to me is I just like my heart shattered. This is the phoenix, like to the point where it was like complete ashes, but completely open, and it was just pure fire came in. Nothing else, just pure fire, which came to me as the goddess. That's what I thought. That I was like, is this the goddess? Like, what is this? It was a very
Probably
there was
Kali.
no mm,
Kali?
I we could go on. I
Mm,
but this was out of my realm of understanding. This
okay.
was a unexplainable spiritual experience that happened that I really there was no drugs involved. This was just grief at its worst or
Wow.
its finest of what it's supposed to do to you. I don't know. But basically pure fire came in. I could not stop writing.
Wow.
Some of the blog posts were a little like prophetic-ish. So I was like, I don't know if that's supposed to be up.
Wow.
But so I have the originals all somewhere for
Wow.
whatever that was, and it still comes through now, but I do need to manage it psychologically because I days can go by and I could just write like fire. But I have to take care of reality, so I kind of have to like tone it down a little bit. But
Okay,
that's
wait a
what
second. Why would you stop that though? Why do you
oh,
want to
because
take it
days would
down?
go by and it's like you got to take your kids to school. Like you've just been
You
writing for
literally be writing for days, just channeling stuff coming
yes,
through.
yes. That's what
What?
happened with the blog. So, but that was also the beginning of grief. So it basically was like, ashes, holy fire came in through writing. And okay, I've never even like processed this part before, but I think what happened was while I was writing, the fire came in and like a fire spirit version of myself arose, which was the courage that drove the books. It was like a pure fire being of me. That was the transmuting fire. It like transmuted my entire self into some phoenix of a self. And then I had the courage to write all the things. So, I
It
mean,
burned away all the non-truth. That's what the phoenix
that's
does. That's what
exactly what
fire
it
does.
did.
Yep. And then the real you rose.
Yes. And now I maintain it, but it rose and then now it's maintenance.
Yeah, but yeah, well, that's life right after. But I mean, my goodness, this is just powerful and so cool. I love this because I hope people do go to your blog to check out what I'm talking about. I mean, there's just so much beautiful poetry. Like, how does your inner divinity shine through? Dream, hope, be. Who were you born to be? What inspires you? When did you start holding back? Why? Intake. What has brought you here? We will work together to recognize your current perceived limitations and goals toward self actualization. Heal, evolve, become. That's from your blog with you telling people about the work you do with them. So, would you like to talk about that as we,
Yeah, I
because
have a fun little mermaid story for you. I'm talking like the Disney animated original Little Mermaid here,
I love
which came out
mermaids.
yes, and the water element
There
too.
you
Yes,
go. Of
I
course.
wish I was a mermaid. I'd be much happier. But yeah,
You
so the
look
Little
like a
Mermaid.
mermaid.
Ah,
I could believe you're a
thanks.
mermaid.
I'll just
You have that energy about you for
believe
sure.
it.
For
So
sure.
I very much connected with the Little Mermaid. This was came out when I was in elementary school, and I saw the Little Mermaid, and it was
That's
so
awesome.
profound.
You
And
definitely have her energy.
she's my favorite. So there's a few profound scenes, but the one that stuck with me and is the one that I connect to explain what happened is she gets the legs and she goes to the surface. And she has to, the wedding is happening. She's like, I gotta go. I have to go be my true self. She stole my voice, right? So she's got to go get her voice back. And she goes up to dive into the water and swim because she's a mermaid. She's like, I know how to swim. And she's gonna go get her voice back. And then all of a sudden she realizes she can't swim because she doesn't have her tail anymore. And then she like flounders in the water. She's like, oh, and then the friends swim up and she holds the friends. So oh, wait, tell me the original question because I totally got distracted. But this is what the answer is to the question.
uh
Oh
Actually I
yes,
don't,
the
yeah.
the intake. So this was
Mm.
when I was making the website, I was also making what my practice was going to be. So what happened was I'd done all of my homework. I knew how to do the things that I was trained to do. But what happened was it felt like after the grief hit me and burned me to the ashes, I was like, okay, I'm just going to dive in and do all the academic stuff. And I'm like, where's my tail? I have legs now. I'm supposed to like get my voice back with legs. So I literally am like, how am I going to do this? And I felt like that exact moment where she dives and she realizes she can't swim. And so that was when there's a part in the book, Surrender to Spirit, which was that part was just no plan of the book at all. That was a 3 a.m. in the morning panic attack where I woke up and I was like, um, what am I doing? It was the, mermaid scene. And then that came through, and I feel like that's the anchor of the whole book. But also that was the anchor of how I started my practice, and it's in surrender. It's when you are ashes, when you completely surrender and you are surrendering to receive from the higher wisdom, from the higher self. And it's basically saying, like, I don't have the fins to get through this, and then the friends swim up and then they help her move forward. So you're saying, like, there's nothing left in me to get through this. I don't have the resources for this. And you surrender, and then the resources come in. And that's basically the whole point of the practice and the book and everything, is when you feel like you can't go on, when you feel like there's absolutely nothing left, it's how you call the resources in to get you in alignment with your soul purpose, what you came here to do. Because, I also worked in crisis and triage, and that was the crisis state is basically what I'm called to work with, because that's where transformation happens. That's where, and we touched on this briefly, but how energy is not created or destroyed. It never changes. It just changes its form. And basically what I've learned, the number one thing through grief, is that it doesn't go anywhere. You just have to relearn the new form of it. And once we're able to reconnect, you realize that you are always in connection, even though the form is completely different. It's totally different than your expectations of what life was going to be or what things were going to look like. And you have to regrow. You have to learn how to walk with new legs, and you walk into a whole new scene. But then in that scene, you connect with your values, you become in alignment, and you do the thing you came to do in Earth School, which I believe is not everything. There's still going to be the part where we're all connected and everything. But Earth School, we're just here to do our stuff. And that's why I kind of go into the astrology too, which, Vedic astrology is extremely scientific and mathematic and very deep and complex. I'll never understand it. But it helps to tap into why, the question is why? Why did this happen? What did I do wrong? What did I do to deserve this?
Yep.
And when you look at it in terms of soul contracts, energy just changes form. We're here to do a certain job, and then we go home. This is actually a very short time. We just need to do the thing we came to do. And that's where it takes the courage to do the thing. And then when you're doing the thing, you actually feel fulfilled. You no longer feel like, I don't want to be here anymore. I don't know why I'm here. You actually have life force energy within you that is helping you get through each day, and actually loving again and feeling connected again and in your purpose again, knowing that as hard and unfair, there is some something behind it. We don't know what the thing is, but there's something behind it. And when you can connect into the resources for how to move forward, ground, take that step, process the emotions, you just go one tiny step at a time, and then the puzzle pieces start slowly coming together, even if you don't see the final puzzle to the end, which the tapestry comes up in the second book. Sometimes in this whole lifetime, you just see the underside of the tapestry. But now, I don't think you need to wait until you get to called to the spirit realm at the end of life to see the other end of the tapestry. I think the spiritual work, actually, you can check into the other side and come right back. So I'm not fully there, but I have felt the results of it. I can't tell you what I've seen or anything, but I feel like I saw the tapestry and then I came back and I'm like, I can keep working on it. And if we're able to have the resources where people, and I know there's new experimental, the psychedelics and all that stuff, but when you're able to tap into the feeling of it, even if it just seems so intangible, but it's going to be okay, that's the light at the end of the tunnel. You just need to tap into the light at the end of the tunnel. And then sometimes we're not supposed to know everything, because then you might not do the thing you needed to do, because you know how it all ends. So it all comes down to trusting the process with enough light at the end of the tunnel to give you the hope and strength and resiliency to like walk in that direction.
You see, what I hear from all of this that you're sharing with us is the tremendous gift from the grief that you got. Because Just even everything you're saying. I mean, you know how many people would kill to have downloads like that when they have writer's block or feel like they're not connected or whatever? I mean, this is just tremendous to hear you talk about all this because it's such a common human experience. I think people don't realize how unbelievably common it is for so many people to feel that way, that they just don't get it. Why am I here? Why did I go through this? I mean, it's like the human condition,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
for all of us to go back and listen again to what you just said about, putting your head down and getting through it and how we get through it step by step, and that many others have walked it with you or before you or behind you, or, we're all kind of walking that in some regard or another. So incredibly valuable.
Yeah,
Dara.
there's a deep
Yeah.
quote about that. We're all basically walking each other home. That's what
Yes.
this is.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I love it. Incredible. Any final thoughts as we wrap up? But that just make you feel complete. We covered a lot of ground today. My goodness. I love this discussion. I know it's going to help a lot of people. But anything that kind of just you feel like you want to share?
Yeah, well, again, the gratitude for the connection because this was completely, what we talked about was unplanned, but because I trust connections so much, that is, and again, back to early attachment. And when you feel safe in a connection, you don't know what you're going to pull down from like higher wisdom. And it happens because of the connection. So
Okay.
value connection and do the work to be able to have healthy connections because that's how we pull into the chalice, the higher realm divinity.
And what is the work to help us have healthy connections? When you're saying value the work, like what do you mean by that?
That's spiritual psychology. But it
Okay.
doesn't have to be like in a big way. It can be in putting your feet on the ground, but that is
Okay.
spiritual psychology.
Like the things
So
we talked about. Yeah.
all the things and they are small. The real work is done in consistent small steps. And
Yes.
even when you two steps forward, one step back, not only still counts, but it's the human condition. Trust the process. Just
Yes.
never give up hope. That's it.
That's so true. I say that all the time. Never, ever give up. And remember that evolution is not a linear process. Swirly, whirly line that goes all over the place. And, like you said, forward, back, up, down, sideways. But it's still going in that direction in some regard. Even stuff when you're way off your path is eventually going to swing back around. So,
Yes.
very, very wise. Very wise. I love it. Dara, how can people find you? Where would you like to direct us to find out more about you?
So the website is phoenixrisingsun.com and everything you need is on there. There's links to everything else through that website. And, it's ever evolving. So it's a lot of fun. I have creative fun with that.
And I do have the Awaken Your Inner Goddess book. And you just came out with another one, right? A
Yeah, there's the
companion.
journal.
The journal companion. Yep. You can see, look at all my tabs and notes. I mean, I've had this for a
That's
while. I
so
was
cool.
so happy.
I love
Yeah.
it.
I was so happy to connect with you and be like, yeah, I'm going to have her on the show. This is awesome. Well, I feel like I met a soul sister today, everybody, and I'm sure you probably agree. And Dara, I mean it sincerely that I hope you come out to Massachusetts and come to one of our events and speak to my online group. It's amazing. Goddess Rising is the name of my online
Yes,
course community,
yes,
and we
I
have guest
love it.
speakers. Yeah, so you can have a private session with us and Dara. I think they would love you. That's for sure. I know they will.
Wow, you're doing wonderful things. And I'm obsessed with the painting. So I'm so
Oh,
glad.
that's so funny. Really? Well, you know what?
Yeah.
When you come here, we will paint together. How's that? And we will make one
Ah,
together.
I would
Yeah,
love that.
that's awesome. Okay. Well, thank you so much, everybody. You know what to do. Please check out Dara's website and her work. All that is in the show notes. And really hope you enjoyed the show today. Share it with a sister friend who might benefit from it. And thanks for being here, walking this path together. We'll see you next time on Awakening Aphrodite. Would you like to support my mission to help empower people all over the world to be all of who they truly are? If so, please subscribe to the show, leave a review on iTunes, and share it with a friend. And if you're looking to take immediate action to align your energy and optimize your health, visit amyfournier.com. Thanks for listening to Awakening Aphrodite. Let's awaken her together in you.
I'm your hostess, Amy Fournier, and I already can't wait to be with you again and for you to hear what I have planned for the next show.
Thanks for listening to Awakening Aphrodite with Amy Fournier. To learn more about Amy, check out her website, amyfournier.com. That's AMYFOURNIER.com. You can also check out Amy's live and on-demand virtual fitness and yoga classes and sign up for her newsletter to receive a free mini ebook of 3 of her top tips for making holistic health a lifestyle. Again, that's amyfournier.com and get your ebook sent to your email immediately. Connect with Amy on the daily on Instagram at FitAmyTV, FITAMYTV, and watch many of the podcast episodes and subtopic clips on her YouTube channel, which is also Fit Amy TV. Enjoy, and we'll see you next time on Awakening Aphrodite.